Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. 402. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, ושבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. Hi, 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 This melody and the sounds of our prayers this evening sound different than they do on Friday nights. Indeed, they are associated with our Shalosh Regalim, our 3 pilgrimage festivals, Sukkot, Shavuot, and of course Passover, perhaps the ultimate pilgrimage our people made. This melody that we're going to use for this Birkat Geula, this blessing of redemption, comes to us from Israel and is associated with words of the Passover Haggadah, reminding us that in every generation, as much as we are feeling threatened, feeling vulnerable, feeling scared, we always have someone standing by our side. Going to begin about 4 lines down on page 404. הפודנו מיד מלאכים, מלכנו הגואלנו מכף כל העריצים, העושה גדולות עד אין חקר, ונפלאות עד אין מספר. אז שם נפשנו בחיים, ולא נתן למות רגלינו, העושה לנו ניסים בפרו, אותות ומופתים באדמת פני חם. ויוצא את עמו ישראל מתוכם לחירות עולם, וראו בניו גבורתו, שיבחו והודו לשמו, ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם. משה ומרים ובני ישראל, לחנו שירה בשמחה רבה, ואמרו כולם. 406. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. מלכותך ראו בניך בוקע ים לפני משה ומרים. זה לי ענו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אמר, כי פן אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד, חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל.
In just a moment, we'll turn to page 408 for Hashkivenu, our prayer for safety and protection. And in that prayer, we ask God to spread a Sukkot Shalom, a canopy of peace over us, over our loved ones, and over all the world. And again, we had our siblings in Israel missing so many who are still being held hostage in Gaza, so many missing at their Passover Seders this year. And so we're praying in this moment that this Sukkot Shalom is extended over them, that they may be safe, that all the people of Gaza may be safe, that all the people of the world find safety and protection. And after Hashkivenu, we'll turn to Mishaberach, our prayer for healing. And in that moment, we'll have the opportunity to call to mind people who are in need of healing of any kind, physical, emotional, spiritual, mental. We'll have the opportunity to share those names with our community as well and bring them into our hearts and pray that whatever their healing journey looks like, that they're able to receive that. First, we go to Hashkivenu on page 408.
Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu, לשלום, והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך ותקננו בעצה טובה מלפניך והושיענו למען שמך והגן מדנו והסר מעלינו אויב דבר וחרב ורעב ויגון והרחק ממנו עוון ופשע ובצל כנפיך תסתירנו כי אל שומרנו מצילנו אתה כי אל חנון ורחום אתה ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם מעתה ועד עולם ברוך אתה אדוני הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים. 5:11 מי שבטח אבותינו מקור הברכה לאמותינו may the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing and let us say Amen.
Pray for healing for the following people.
Mi sheberach imotenu mekol habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
If you know of a CBE member who's in need of additional support, please find us after the service. We'd love to reach out to them and support them. So we are going to move now into our silent Amidah, which is going to begin on page 468. And this is a reminder that because we have hit Passover, we now have some special additions during our Amidah tonight. So be sure to look for Pesach as you're going through Amidah. And also during our prayer, we've also switched into our seasons. And so we are switching into Morid Hatal, okay, when we get to that part of Amidah. But before we go to 468, we're going to go to page 410 and ask everyone to please rise.
את מועדי אדוני אל בני Israel. We continue silently, page 468. conclude our standing prayer, I invite you to make sure you have a sheet from the entrance that looks like this, as well as page 570 in your prayer book as we prepare to count the Omer, this 7-week period between Passover and Shavuot. A beautiful teaching about it by Rabbi Yosef Goldman, who also wrote this melody, is at the bottom of the page. We begin at the top of the page and then to page 570. Leshem yichud kudsha brichu shchintei hineni muchan umezuman lekayem mitzvat aseh shel sfirat haomer shel sfirat haomer shel sfirat haomer shel sfirat haomer sheva shabbatot temimot tiyena sheva shabbatot temimot tiyena. The middle of page 570 for the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav etzivanu al sfirat haomer al sfirat haomer al sfirat haomer al sfirat haomer hayom hayom shisha yamim laomer ay 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 Today is 6 days of the Omer. Please be seated.
Almost a week ago, I found myself surrounded by family for the first night of Passover. And as the only student rabbi in the family, I was tasked with leading our Seder, a short and sweet Seder, I was reminded by my father-in-law. My mom was joining and had brought the Haggadot that we would use, and just as we were sitting down, a thick piece of paper fell out from one of the Haggadahs. We picked it up and found that it was a folded greeting card that told the entire Passover story, pictures included. As we flipped through the pages, we turned it over, and on the back of the card were 2 short and sweet words: "Love, Grandma." My family and I immediately felt the presence of my beloved grandma, Doris Baumgarten, flood into the room. She died about 1.5 years ago at age 92, and yet with just 2 words, she was there, ready to be alongside us as we sang, ate, and celebrated Passover together. Her loving, caring presence filled the room, showing us that even though she could no longer cook or set the elaborate table or tell her stories throughout the Seder, she was showing us, she was reminding us to zachor, to remember. And that is precisely why we have gathered here tonight, to zachor, to remember. At times, we intentionally remember our family and friends who are no longer physically with us by visiting their final resting place, sharing stories about their lives, supporting organizations and causes that they cared about. And then there are the ways that they seem to insert themselves into our lives. A memory pops up into our head. We walk or drive past a place that they loved, that we spent time with them there, or through a small card found in a Haggadah. Remembrance is a key theme throughout Judaism and throughout every Jewish holiday, but maybe especially for Passover. We tell the story of our people again and again, year after year. In that story, we read, B'chol dor vador, chayav adam lirot et atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim. In every generation, we are called upon to view oneself as if we ourselves had left Egypt. Our Haggadah seems to ask us to remember to such an extreme level that it should feel as if we ourselves personally had left Egypt and marched proudly toward liberation. However, remembrance is not only found in Passover through our reading of the story, but in Moses' own remembrance of past generations. Before our Exodus story begins in earnest, we read about the death of Joseph, the son of Jacob, who was sold into slavery and eventually came to be second in command to Pharaoh in Egypt. As Joseph is dying, he calls upon his brothers to express one final wish to them: to not let his bones remain in Egypt, but as soon as the Israelites begin their journey to the Promised Land, to bring him with them. We read at the end of Genesis, Vayamat Yosef. Joseph died at the age of 110 years, and he was embalmed in place Ba'aron in a coffin in Egypt. Fast forward several generations in our story through the burning bush and the plagues, and Pharaoh finally relenting to let our people go. We read in Exodus, Vayikach Moshe et atzmot Yosef imo. And Moses took with him the bones of Joseph. Moses remembered Joseph. He hadn't left him behind to languish in Mitzrayim, in the narrow place of Egypt, even in death. Joseph will be brought to the Promised Land. It's a remarkable part of our story, Moses remembering his ancestor Joseph amidst all of the things that the Israelites needed to do to get out of Egypt, and Moses bringing his body with the Israelites to freedom and to liberation. And yet, in a midrash that I learned from one of my teachers, Moses' remembrance isn't limited to this one act. In Tosefta Sota, a piece of commentary expanding upon what we see in our Torah, we read, and there were two aronot, two arks traveling together, the Aron Kodesh, the Holy Ark, and the Aron Shel Met, the Ark of the Dead. This explanation tells us that as the Israelites were marching toward the Promised Land, they carried with them two arks. One, the Holy Ark that carried God's commandments for the people, and a second, the Ark of the Dead that carried Joseph's bones. In holding both of these aronot, both of these arks together, the Israelites are not only holding on to Joseph through memory, but holding on to him through their actions. The remembrance of Joseph is not a singular act that Moses accomplished, but rather something that is continuous, guiding the people forward from Egypt to the Promised Land, from the narrow place to a place filled with possibility and with vibrancy. Remembrance connects us not only with our past, but it is a necessary part of building our future. Just as Moses and the Israelites continuously remembered Joseph, so too can we honor and cherish the people we love who have died in the last year and in years before. As we are gathered here tonight, this moment calls out to us to remember our loved ones, their smile, their care, their passion. but it also calls out to us to lift them up, to carry their memories with us, their stories, their life lessons guiding the way for us. And sharing those stories is a radical act of remembrance that brings us much closer with them. The presence of our loved ones who have departed this earth can fill us up when we're drained. They can provide us with the strength, the courage, the compassion to live with meaning and with purpose. Tonight, we have gathered to Zachor, to remember. May their memories, all those that we're remembering in this moment, may their memories be for an everlasting blessing. And just like Joseph, guiding the Israelites through the desert, may their memories guide each and every one of us, each and every day. Good Yom Tov.
Page 576. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai rohi lo echsar, in od deshe yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yenaleni, nafshi yeshovev, yancheni b'maglei tzedek, yancheni b'maglei tzedek, leman shemo. Gam ki elech begeitz al mavet lo yira ki ata imadi shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni taroch lefanai shulchan neged tzorerai dishan tava shemen roshi kosi revaya ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yamei chayai v'shavti beveit Adonai leorech yamim. Continue with our silent Yizkor prayers using the words on page 580, the material in the CBE Book of Remembrance, or the words of our hearts.
For the next part of our service tonight, we have an open space for you to share a story, a memory, a reflection of someone that you're thinking of tonight. And so we'll just start over here, and you are welcome to share. Again, you're welcome to pass for now. And this will be an opportunity for our community to hear some incredible stories, to be in relationship, be connected to the people that each of us is remembering tonight. And you can stay seated while you talk. You can stand while you talk. We'll pass the microphone if you want to use a microphone. But this is an opportunity, an open space for our community to really be with each other, to hear each other, and to come into relationship with even more people that we're thinking of right now.
I'm remembering my grandfather, Hans J. Frank. He was an international tax attorney. He's the Frank and Fried Frank. But he also was trying constantly to get me to play backgammon. And I was resistant. And it was around the same time that my parents refused to get me a Nintendo. But it was also the time that the Game Boy came out. And so somehow I convinced Grandpa Hans, international tax attorney, that I could play backgammon on a Game Boy. And so I convinced him to get me a Game Boy. And then when he found out that he had been had, he was a very good sport about it. He was a good sport in many ways, and I miss him very much. Shakoach. Thank you for doing this mitzvah, Susan.
had a chance to go home for a holiday, and I guess that I must have told my mother in advance what time I'd be coming in, and it was like 6 o'clock in the morning or something. Anyway, the driver and I came in at around 6 o'clock, and there was my mother on the terrace waving a bagel at me. Even though it was 6 o'clock in the morning, she was there because I would be there. So it was a nice, very nice, fun memory to have.
Sure enough, my husband was nice to drive me here, since I live in Brooklyn Heights. And on the way here, they were playing this song on the radio, Hold That Tiger, and that happens to be one of my dad's favorite songs, and which is really interesting because on Tuesday, if he would have lived, it would have been his 100th birthday. So that was like a sign, you know. I'm always thinking of my parents, my grandparents, what they would say, what they would do. And today, I'd like to remember all the people who were killed in Israel and Kfar Arza, from that festival. So this is a hard day. So thank you for letting me share.
Well, I'm thinking about my mother and father and aunts and uncles. Especially come to mind my in-laws, both of whom were Holocaust survivors, both of whom were in Auschwitz, and who came to the United States and made a new life and chose, instead of the double grave, the double bed, and had a child, my wife. And today, with what's happening, it saddens me so much to watch what people are saying, what other Jews are saying about other Jews in Israel, and by extension, here. It's very sad.
So my younger brother was 7 years younger than me, and he and I were both very competitive, and we were always trying to compete with each other, but I had 7 years on him, so I was always winning. And another fact about me is that horseradish is like my favorite food. And so every year at Seder, I would just like guzzle down the horseradish. We would have like full stalks of them, and I would just like sit there chewing on it all night. And one Seder, I was like, I think I was 16 or 17, so he was like 9 or 10. Henry decided that he was going to compete with me on how much horseradish that we could eat. And so I was just like, you know, guzzling it down, having a great time. And he put like one stalk in his mouth and then immediately vomited all over the Seder table. And that's what I'm remembering at this Passover, of my little brother just like full vomit on the Seder table. So now you all get that image too. You're welcome.
Thank you. My parents are no longer here, but they always remembered my younger siblings, and now it is my blessing to remember them. My younger brother and my older sister, who both died in childhood, and it feels good if I can say their names, Scott and Natalie, and just think about not so much memories, but the lives that never were. So thank you.
I'm remembering my dad, Larry. He died 5 years ago, April 21st, 2019, as Cantor Breitzer knows, as he was there. Because it was in the midst of Passover, I remember him all year round, but really at this time of year, it's very present because he loved the Jewish holidays and coming over and Passover. And this year in particular, I'm remembering that my sister's birthday is April 23rd, and in 2019, that was the day of his funeral. And I'm just having a lot of thoughts about something we talk about in services, and the rabbis and cantors talk about, life and death and how it's all kind of intertwined because we're human and we don't have control over anything. But I am just, it feels good to sit here and remember and share with everyone.
So I'm here primarily to remember my dad, who died last September unexpectedly, and often it still feels surreal. It's still fresh, so that's, I think, allowable. But they're increasing markers where my dad's not there that reinforces the fact that it's the memories we have. But what I really miss, and I was feeling this week, was the chance to talk about the complexity of our world and the nuances that always kind of oriented him to his Jewish identity, which was much more spiritual than it was based in ritualistic observance. It was about being part of a culture of questioning, a culture of honesty, of intellectual rapport, and around the holidays, that absence is something I'm feeling.
My dad died the last day of Passover 6 years ago, so always easy to remember and always nice to have Yizkor services. He had what I would, this may sound strange, but he had a great death. He was diagnosed with cancer about 4 years earlier, and it was stage 4 lung cancer. It's about a 20% mortality rate for 5 years, and his initial response was, I feel bad for the other 4 guys. But he didn't live his life in a way that anyone would recognize as Zen. And he could be irascible and had a temper, but accepted his disease with amazing equanimity, and was totally unembarrassed by what happened to his body, and unapologetic for what he was going through. And my family came for Seder. We weren't going to, my wife and kids were living abroad. It was our last year, and my parents were in Arizona. It was a long trip. But we knew it could be his last Seder, but no one expected anything that quick. And Seder was a Friday night that year. The entire family, my 2 brothers and all of our wives and children and family and other cousins and friends were there. He led Seder on a Friday night. He was too tired to do so on the Saturday. That Monday, his last treatment was unsuccessful, and his doctor basically said it's silly to do any more treatment. So he went into hospice at home, and then 5 days later, he was gone. But he was surrounded by his entire family, and he was so at peace with everything. And he said, anything I didn't do in my life, I don't need to do. Everything I set out to do, I've done, and it's fine. And it would have been great to have more time. He had a full life. He was 5 months shy of his 80th birthday, but would have been 86 today. And that's not too old, but it was such a beautiful thing to be in that situation. So.
Yeah, excuse me, I'm not sure I can get through this. I lost my mom this past year. And it had been a long time since she took care of me. I had to learn to be self-reliant at a fairly young age because my father passed away when I was 12. So over the last decades, really, my wife and I really took care of her finances, her home, chores. I don't remember the last meal that she cooked for me. I cooked many for her. So I was surprised by how much her loss would take from me. I'm still feeling it. Not as often, but holidays, family gatherings like this, it hits me pretty hard. She was always the one who was so proud of everything I did. So supportive, non-judgmental. And you never get your mother back. Thank you.
I don't know if I need this thing. Okay, I don't know. My father was a tanker during World War II, and he was in the Battle of Normandy. And he was also in the West. And when he came back from the war, he never spoke about it, but he picked up a paintbrush, and he basically said, I've seen death and destruction. Now I'm going to paint peace and love. And he used to go down to the village art show, and what he used to do is, he also was a sculptor, and he took this Carrara marble, and he sculpted an engraving of Moses coming down from the mountain that we made pictures of and gave to all my friends. So I guess that's kind of like one of the most unique things ever. I also want to talk about my grandmother. When my grandmother wanted to become a citizen, she went before the judge. And with my grandmother, there was my mother and my father, my aunts and my uncles, all of them in uniform. So the judge says to my grandmother, who's the first president? She says, George Washington. Who's the Abraham Lincoln? The judge looked at my grandmother and said, ma'am, who are those people with you in uniform? And my grandmother says, my son, my daughter, my daughter-in-law, my son-in-law, my son-in-law, my daughter. The judge came down from where the bench, walked over to my grandmother, put his arms around her, kissed her, and said, lady, you are the best citizen I've ever seen from what you just gave to the American military. Here's your papers.
This is in memory of my paternal grandmother. Her name was Margaret Hertz Friedman. And she was born and raised in a village in Slovakia called Turek. And while living there, a member of that family had immigrated to America and had written back saying that he had a place in New York City. If anybody else in the family wanted to come to emigrate, they would have a place. So my grandmother decided she was going to do this. She was barely out of her teens. And obviously she worked and maybe people helped her to get the wherewithal to go, but she went on her own, by herself, from the middle of some village in the middle of Slovakia, all the way through Europe to Hamburg, Germany, where she got on a boat. Remember, she always told me the name of the boat was Kaiser Friedrich Wilhelm de Grosse. And she sailed on her own all the way to America by herself. If you can imagine a 19-year-old Jewish woman going from the middle of nowhere all the way to America on her own. Just the courage and the wherewithal is breathtaking. And I thank God she did this, because had she not done so, then I would have no memory of this family, because the Nazis came in and killed every last member of her family. None of them survived. So because of her, I have a memory of a life in Eastern Europe that my father's family had, and I miss her. She died about 30 years ago, but I always think about her. We used to call her Grammy Mamushku, which was Slovakian for, I guess, grandma. And I loved her very much.
We'll take it, Mark. We'll take it.
Now this is a dream. This came in a dream. And dreams are very important to me. I've been writing them down for about, close to over 30 years now. They're very vivid and they're very detailed. Now, this dream I had many years after my grandmother passed away. And it was quite a few years ago also. I was in the dream. I was walking down the street with my mother. We were somewhere in the United States. I don't know where. It was some small town somewhere in the United States. It was late at night, and there were billions of stars out there. And I was very, very depressed, because in the dream my grandmother had just died. And then I was looking up at those stars, and there was a, what do you call it? It was like a presence, an unbelievable, beneficent feeling I had from this presence. I had no doubt that this was God. It was so beneficent, and it was unbelievable. And this presence, this intelligence, came beyond the stars, and the stars were like billions of them out there. It came to me, and with some type of what do you call it? Not a voice. It was like telepathy, telepathic. It said to me, "Your grandmother was all right, and you're all right." And I have no doubt that this was real. No doubt whatsoever that this was God telling my grandmother was all right up there, and I'm all right down here.
Is there anybody who passed who wants to share a story now?
To need the mic. This is something I miss every Passover. My parents both were Holocaust survivors, and I was born in Europe. We all came here together. But my dad taught my younger sister and myself the vier kashas, the 4 questions in Yiddish. So at every Seder, we said it, and we said the 4 questions in Hebrew, we said them in English, and I miss saying them in Yiddish. It was Mele Tater will bei dir fragen. Der erste Kasche is. I miss him terribly. And this year, I lost my husband. And what I miss at Passover about him is that every year he would, when he began the meal, he would say, "Sari, you really outdid yourself this year." And he would say the same thing every year. I can still hear him say that. Thank you.
got to hear one story about my grandma, but this week I'm thinking about her and my opa, who lived in Aiken, South Carolina, which is a very small town close to the Georgia border, and they were incredibly active members of their small synagogue, and which famously, I think, is the longest running synagogue that has never had a full-time clergy person. And so it was so important to them to be active in the synagogue. And for years, there is a long list of Hebrew Union College rabbinical students who would go serve their congregation for the high holidays. And I did not get to fulfill that role, but there's a long list of now rabbis who knew my grandparents and spent time in Aiken, South Carolina, and came to love that congregation. So I'm thinking about them a little bit more this week. With all of these stories, with all these memories, we'll turn to sharing names. And I invite you to rise as you hear the name of the person that you're remembering.
And these are people who have passed away since last Passover in the CBE community.
Yeah. Keith Abrams, Stanley Lewis Alpert, David Bender, Dina Bertston, Darlene Christensen, Melvin Cohen, Juliet Diller, Daniel Ebenstein, Rena Feuerstein-Strauch, Susan Flappen, Patricia Frank, Raina Frank Goodman, Sandra Freed, Robert Frey, Arlene Friedman, Doug Fuhrer, Hillary Gertler, Bruce Ginsburg, Sim Glazer, Bill Grinker, Daniela Hampel, Barry Hardy, Catherine Harris, Phyllis Hatter, Harold Hirschfield, Chuck Hurwitz, Francis Hyman, Stephen Johnson, Chaim Katzman, Stephen Lefkowitz, David Leinhardt, Terrence Levine, Sydney Levine, Diana Levitt, Mark Levy, Sharon LeWinter, Barnett Lieberman, David Lieberman, Tracy Longman, Evelyn Malkin, Joanna Merlin, Melissa Miller, Carmen Nichelis, Richard Oberfield, Danny Perez, Evelyn Poman, Mark Patecha, Naomi Price Nahama, Richard Ravitch, Lori Reichman, Donna Rockwell Smilovitz, Rebecca Rosenberg, Sarah Bell Rosenzweig, Earl Sandroff, Mark Schneider, Isabel Schwartz, Jeffrey Siegel, Richard Selmansky, Reb Arthur Shapiro, Mark Sylvan, Stephen Sparer, Neve Sparks, Arthur Stricker, Artis Vaughn, Tiffany Watson, Gilda Yolis Mintz, Zeke Zavala. Invite you to rise and also share the names of people that you are remembering. on page 583. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter,
we remember them.
In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring,
we remember them.
In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer,
we remember them.
In the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn,
we remember them.
In the beginning of the year and when it ends,
we remember them.
When we are weary and in need of strength,
we remember them.
When we are lost and sick at heart,
we remember them.
When we have joys we yearn to share,
we remember them.
So long as they live, we too shall live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them.
El male rachamim, shochein b'meromim, hametzei menucha nechona, tachat kanfei hashechina, im kedoshim utehorim, kezor arakia mazhirim, lenishmot yakireinu sheharechu leolamam, bal harachamim yastirem beseter knafav leolamim, veitzror bitzror achayim et nishmatam, Adonai hu nachalatam, ve'anuchu v'shalom al mishkavam, ve'nomar Amen.
With all of these people, with all of these stories in our hearts, we turn to page 598 for Kaddish Atom, Mourner's Kaddish.
Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman karvi v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'la'amen. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yit'hala shemei dekudsha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushpechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may all these memories always be for blessing. Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. This concludes our Yizkor service. Please join us again on Wednesday, June 12th at 6:30 p.m. for Yizkor at the end of Shavuot. Good Yantiv. Good evening.
shoot on my preseason affiliation.
Let's talk.
It's a lot. Yeah. Yeah, cannot go. I even know.
It's there. I can feel it.
It's
Sentiments. Because I did the other one, I had another one. Although in the past 2 years, like there's been a new model, so it's slightly different. But it's a mental thing, like, oh, this is the strong one now. Like, what are you talking about? We run exercise classes, spent so much time in it.
My grandparents moved there. Yeah. My grandparents moved there. And my mom went to college. But my mom grew up in Wilmington. And then
Which one?
Okay, how are you, Scott? I had surgery.
to South Carolina.
I'm fine. It was fixing a problem.
Knee?
About 7 years
Ankle.
ago. I grew up in
Ankle.
Oklahoma. About
You
7
okay?
years ago, my parents moved
We're getting there.
Are you need to drive home or something?
No, it's okay. Thank you. It's very sweet. Thank you, Scott.
All right. You're under some sort of random placement program, or did you have to do it because you wanted to go?
So I wanted to come to New York for school. So school is,
At the center.
yeah. So it's here, Cincinnati, Los Angeles, and so wanted to be here. And then we had like a big interview day to figure out where people would be interning. So and CD was on my list. So got what's that? And New Rose, yeah. So that was really
It's an interesting congregation. There's a lot of roots in Brooklyn.
yeah.
There's like a struggle between its very liberal leanings, but it's also, I would say, a conservative approach to practice. And I actually see that there's been a in this country. The growing tenor of acceptance of the liberal movement is undeniable. And there's really a record in very liberal nations such as ours. We're getting something to the sides, and it's not going to be pleasant.
I'm over to me.
It's hard for you to
It might be.
There's none of this the right way thing, but it's not.
You're good. There's a chance that it might start raining, but I still have my stitches, so it can't get wet. I don't know yet. We'll see. Great.
Well, without food.
Without the food, we're basically neighbor, like we live around the corner. So we'll see.
So, all right, well, thank you for sharing.
You're really, you know, being like, I got to figure it out. Yeah. I'm trying to figure out our kids' engagement, disengagement. Serena and I go way back. Yeah. I was Serena's teacher pre-pandemic. I found the cutest pictures of her. Like, I even taught her to tequila. I was supposed to chant. She was shorter than me, than these was. Yeah. Atrophy.
just left for to walk out.
Are you getting physical therapy yet?
Not yet.
Wow. I took a picture of her last weekend. She hates it.
Well, I heard